Well, well, well. Bill Maher, the guy who's made a career out of snarking at everyone, has gone viral again. This time, it's not for dunking on woke or Republicans, it's for actually admitting he was wrong about Donald Trump's economy. You heard that right. The man who once rooted for a recession to oust Donald Trump is now eating crow, and it's surprising, if anything else. In case you guys missed it, Maher recently said on his Club Random podcast that Trump's tariffs, which he thought, quote unquote, would fucking sink the economy, haven't tanked it at all. In fact, the stock market's hitting record highs, and he's not seeing a country in deep, deep depression as he predicted. And who knew Bill Maher would actually admit he was wrong? I've been watching him for a very, very long time, and I don't think he's ever admitted he was wrong, let alone to side with a Republican. So I thought that was very interesting. So today I wanted to do a deep dive into that moment and why is he showing any kind of humility at all. Never in a million years thought that would happen. So today I want to unpack what the liberals and more were predicting when Trump took office in 2025, how tariffs actually played out, and how inflation's been managed under this administration. So back when Trump won in 2024, the diehard liberals were in complete full panic mode. The narrative was apocalyptic. Economists, pundits, and yes, even Bill Maher were losing their shit. They were predicting Trump's policy, especially his big, beautiful tariffs, would unleash a hellstorm of inflation, job losses, and a recession that make the Great Depression look like just a single bad day in the market. So I just wanted to give you guys a taste of the vibe that was going on in early 2020.
Trump is upon us now.
We're in a car driven by somebody who was blackout drunk. And it's like one of those bad Bugs Bunny cartoons. It's Looney Tunes.
This is not Liberation Day in America. It's Recession Day.
The greatest man-made economic crisis in modern presidential history, and paralyze American businesses, large and small, forcing them to lay off people, to stop hiring or pause investment decisions.
It feels like there's an expression in tech called chaos monkey. Well, this particular chaos monkey is throwing feces all over the planet, essentially, and saying, enjoy.
So that's what was going on with liberals early 2025, late 2024. So I was selling this house, and I had this crazy, I didn't know he was a liberal at the time, but it was this $8 million house. It was a new build. And this guy comes in and he was trying to negotiate with me. I was in between the builder and him. So he made an offer of $7 million, $1 million under the ask price. And he wanted seller financing. And this guy was obviously pretty well off, probably late 40s, single guy. And at once I said, well, that's ridiculous. You're offering $1 million lower than the ask. And I said, even still, I said, the election just happened. I said, the election just happened. I'm sure that the economy is going to start seeing a turn to the positive, and that he just unleashed it on me. I was like, I can't believe you voted for Trump, and just went off. And he's like, you and your daughter have lost all your women's rights. And I was like, what the hell is this guy talking about? And we weren't really talking. I wasn't thinking I was making any big political message. I was just trying to be positive about the economy, and he just lost his shit on me. And I was like, my daughter and I said, you don't give two flying fucks about my daughter or if she can have an abortion, or like, this guy could care less. But he was trying to fearmonger me into believing that I should have just voted liberal because then I wouldn't lose all my women's rights. Because once I got down to the end of it, figure out how he would benefit. Because at the end of the day, it's all about what he can benefit. And yeah, at the end of the day, I found out that he was actually in the pharmaceutical business. And a lot of people, including a lot of liberals, are very wrapped up in pharmaceuticals, so they wouldn't serve them right having the new Maher director in there. And I think they were going to see things start to change in the pharmaceutical business. And that's where all the fear mongering came from. So yeah, the liberals had it dialed in, that's for sure. So I just picked out a couple other points, like CBC News was warning the tariffs were going to cost $1,000 to $2,000 per household. JP Morgan predicted a 1.5 bump in inflation to hit consumer spending. And then Maher himself, on real time in April 2025, called Trump's tariffs completely ass backwards, saying he was picking a fight with the wrong foe, and that's China. And he said he was rooting for a recession to get Trump out. Classy move, but Bill, nothing says I care about the working class like hoping they lose their job. And here's their logic behind that. Their logic was very simple. Tariffs equal higher prices equals inflation equals economic doom. Economists like those at Goldman Sachs estimated a 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico would raise inflation by 0.7% and take 4.4% off the GDP. Yale's budget lab threw out numbers like $1,900 to $7,600 in extra cost per household. It was like everyone had a crystal ball, and it was showing like Mad Max and Fury. I just thought about it. This was just like the liberals. It was apocalyptic. It was like, we're all going to hell in a handbasket. That's what it seemed like from the liberals when Trump took over. So now we fast forward to July 28, 2025, and Bill's at his club Random with the progressive YouTuber Brian Tyler Cohen, and he drops an absolute bombshell. He goes, I would have thought, and I had gotten in on my own, that the tariffs were going to fucking sink the economy by this time. And they didn't. The stock market is at record highs. I don't see a country in a depression at all. Bill Maher, this is the guy that's been anti-Trump since the golden escalator days, is actually admitting he is wrong. So this is why I wanted to do a deep dive into this. I wanted to see what has changed and why isn't America in this dystopian of a wasteland. So I wanted to really look at the numbers because, unlike Maher's usual hot takes, numbers don't lie. This is not opinion. These are just straight up facts. So the stock market, as Maher noted, is at a record high. The Dow's been flirting with 45,000, and the S&P 500 is up 15% since January. Just think about that. If you had just invested in the S&P 500, you would be up 15% right now for a simple stock investment. So unemployment is down to 4.1%, and manufacturing output went up to 0.1% in June. And that is a little increase, but that's been the first increase in absolute years. And here's the kicker. Those tariffs everybody feared about, they're not the economy killers they were thought to be, at least not yet. Trump's team rolled out a 10% universal tariff, 25% on Canada and Mexico, and up to 20% on China. Economics scream stagflation. That's stagnation plus inflation. But the data is telling a completely different story. It turns out Trump tariffs threats might have been productive and more of a poker play than bullying his way to a trade deal. But who knew? Like, I believe that he is the master of the deal. I read his book, The Art of the Deal. I thought it was great. So I think there's a lot of smaller negotiations going on. I think we see the big back and forth, but between the big back and forth, I think he's very smart, and this is where he's playing 4D chess, and he's making some micro moves in there that I don't think we all see to get the incomes that he's getting. He's also playing strong because he knows that they have more to lose by losing us than us losing them. So he is negotiating from a place of strength, that's for sure. So I just want to figure out how these tariffs actually helps us. So let's break it down, because this is where the liberals, like, they just tear up and can't see what's actually the positive going on. So the first thing is the manufacturing boost. The Trump tariffs, like the 25% on steel and aluminum, have given a shot in the arm to the U.S. manufacturing. June 2025 saw a 0.1% uptick in input, which doesn't sound like much, but after years of decline, the idea is simple: make imported goods pricier, and companies start producing here. It's not perfect. So Robards are taking some of those jobs, as Maher noted, but it's definitely a start in the right direction. And then we have the trade deal leverage. Trump's been using tariffs like a sledgehammer to get trade deals. Like the EU, after Trump threatened a 30% tariff, Ursula von der Leyen caved and signed a deal with 50% tariffs on EU goods. That's $750 billion in energy exports to Europe. That's Trump is, like I said, he's playing 4D chess. He is just, I think he's just, not that he's smarter, but I think he's just more strategic than everybody else. Like I said, he's playing 4D chess. They're still playing checkers. I really think that and I also think he spent the last 4 years thinking about this and coming up with a strategy, which I think that he's really spent a lot of time analyzing what was going on in the last 4 years and running his numbers before he ever got into office. So I think that a lot of planning has been going on. And then there's national security. This one is also super important. Tariffs on key goods like steel, aluminum, and pharmaceuticals means we're much, much less reliant on countries like China. So when China's in a crisis, it doesn't affect us. Imagine a war where you're begging Beijing for bandages. It just doesn't look good. But don't get me wrong, tariffs aren't magic. They've raised prices on some goods like iPhones and sneakers, just by a few bucks, but it has raised some items. But the Tax Foundation says it's about $1,300 extra per household in 2025. But here's the thing. People are still outliving their lives. As Maher noted, the shelves aren't empty and we're not trading chickens for gas like it was in the 1800s. So there's a positive thing. So again, inflation is also going down. So definitely inflation has been a huge indicator. And I think everybody thought with the tariffs that the inflation was going to go through the roof. And that actually didn't happen. So like I said, the tariffs is really the big elephant in the room that I think is affecting everybody on a day-to-day basis. And I think that was the biggest thing and worry that was going to happen with the tariffs. And the liberals warned Trump's tariffs would send prices to the moon. Like I said, JP Morgan said 1 to 1.5% higher inflation. Deutsche Bank predicted 4.5%. And yet here we are with inflation at just 2.7 in June 2025. And that was from this graph, but I also looked today and it is still 2.7. So how did that happen? So we have the Federal Reserve's rule. The Fed under Jerome Powell has kept interest rates steady, anchoring long-term inflation expectations. They're not letting tariff-driven price bumps spiral into 1970s like complete inflation structure. Consumer spending. Despite tariff costs, consumer spendings are holding strong at 70% of GDP. Retail sales are up and confidence is ticking upwards. And then we have the tariff collaboration. Trump's team has tweaked tariffs to avoid total chaos. For example, they exempted phones and computers from some tariffs. Well, Maher did actually notice that as well. He said that it's not for the monsters. The inflation is not the monsters we promised. Annoying, but manageable. But now, how could it spike tomorrow? But for now, the economy is humming, and Maher's actually admitting it. So have a quick look at.
I, along with probably most people, was saying at the beginning, oh, by the 4th of July, somebody had to think how the country was, the economy was going to be tanked by then. And I was kind of like, well, that seems right to me, but that didn't happen. Now, it could happen tomorrow. I'm just saying that's reality. So let's work first from the reality of that, not from I just hate Donald Trump. Because that's boring and doesn't get us anywhere and leads you to dishonesty. Because the truth is, I don't know what his strategy is. But look, the stock market is at record highs. I know not everybody lives by the stock market, but I also drive around. I don't see a country in a depression at all. I see people out there just living their lives. And I would have thought, and I got to own it, that these tariffs were going to fucking sink this economy by this time. And they didn't. So, how do we deal with that fact? Because that's the fact. Yeah.
So, how what's the takeaway from all this? Bill Maher's biopic is a rare moment of honesty, and Donald Trump actually sent this tweet out today saying, thanks, Bill. So I think I'll give it to Bill Maher. He actually can call a spade a spade. He doesn't need to, like, I think the liberals for the last 4 years have been trying to shine a turd, and he's had a hard time with that. So I think when he sees a win, I think he calls a win. I think he calls a spade, so I will give him that. I thought he was starting to lose that for a little while and just do whatever the liberal narrative was, but I think now he's coming to his senses. So liberals, including Maher, predicted Trump's tariffs would crater the economy. But in 6 months, we've got record stock markets, low unemployment, and inflation that's basically just taking a nap, but staying stagnant. No big bumps in inflation, and I don't think we foresee any more coming soon. Tariffs have boosted manufacturing, secured trade deals, and reduced reliance on foreign goods. Without the apocalyptic fallout everyone feared, does this mean Trump's economic genius? Well, I don't think so, but I think that we have to definitely give credit where credit's due. The economy is doing much better than expected. And even Maher, he got on it. So what do you think? Are tariffs the secret sauce, or are we just delaying the inevitable? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you think of Bill Maher and his deep dive. Like I said, I've been watching him for a long, long time. And I'm like a technically a fence sitter. I go on either side wherever it makes sense is where my decisions lie. And I really thought that he was like that as well. But then I realized in the last couple of years that he was kind of like just same old narrative as the mainstream media. But now going to Trump and visiting him for supper and kind of coming out and say this publicly and not fearing that the pushback from the liberals, I thought was very interesting. So we'll see where it goes from there. So you guys please like, subscribe, share, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.